Mr. Speaker, let me first thank the chairman of the bipartisan committee, the Honorable Dr. Alan Marat, for presenting to this Parliament the report, and also our good, hard-working Minister for Bougainville Affairs, the Honorable Minister Manasseh Makipa. I also want to acknowledge the Vice President of Bougainville and the leaders of Bougainville who are seated in the gallery today. Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak on one of the most important issues that this Parliament and indeed our nation will ever confront in our lifetime. The future of Bougainville and the question of the Bougainville referendum. This is not simply a political issue, Mr. Speaker. It is an issue of national sovereignty. It is an issue of constitutional integrity. It is an issue of peace, unity, sacrifice, and the future survival of Papua New Guinea as one indivisible nation. Mr. Speaker, I stand here not merely as a member of Parliament. I stand here as a Papua New Guinean. I stand here as a former military officer who witnessed firsthand the horrors, pain, and the destruction of Bougainville crisis. I stand here as a person who saw young Papua New Guineans die defending the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our nation. Today I speak not out of disdain for Bougainville. I speak out of love for Bougainville and Papua New Guinea. Section 2 of the Constitution and the territorial integrity of Papua New Guinea, Mr. Speaker. Section 2 of our Constitution clearly establishes the absolute sovereignty of Papua New Guinea and defines the territorial boundaries of our independent state. Bougainville is not a foreign country. Bougainville is part of the absolute sovereign territory of Papua New Guinea, Mr. Speaker. When our founding fathers officially adopted our Constitution by Constitutional Assembly on August 15, 1975, which officially came into effect a month later on the 16th of September, 1975, coinciding with our country's independence on that day. Bougainville formed part of the independent state of Papua New Guinea. That constitutional position remains in effect today. No parliament should lightly surrender the sovereign territorial boundaries of our nation. No generation of leaders should become the generation remembered for presiding over the dismemberment of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, our flag, our constitution, our sovereignty were built upon sacrifice. Many lives were lost to preserve this country. That sovereignty must never be weakened by political pressure, emotional rhetoric, or foreign influence. The origins of Bougainville crisis, Mr. Speaker. To properly understand where we are today, we must honestly reflect on how Bougainville crisis began. The roots of Bougainville crisis were complex. They involved grievances over the Panguna mine, environmental destruction, landowner compensation, identity, and distribution of wealth. But there were also political failures. The crisis escalated in 1998, during the period when the Pangu-led government was in power under the prime ministership of Belden Namah. The state response, 1988, pardon me, in 1988. The state response at the time was inconsistent, reactive, and at times disconnected from the realities on the ground. Mr. Speaker, I was actually doing my year 12 in Sogeri National High School when the crisis, Bougainville crisis, escalated. The landowners wanted their fair share of wealth generated from Panguna mine and 10 million kina compensation for environmental pollution, especially on the Jaba River and the villages in the mine area. Instead, the government sent in riot squads, destroyed villages, assaulted women and children. That's when Bougainville men took up arms to defend their women folks, because most parts of Bougainville, or the island of Bougainville, a matrilineal society, and women are the stronghold of Bougainville society and communities. It was never about breaking away from Papua New Guinea, and that must be a very important basis for this debate. It was never about breaking away from Papua New Guinea. It was never about political independence. But the nation suffered greatly as the conflict escalated into a civil war. Thousands of innocent lives were lost. Entire communities were destroyed. Families were divided. The economy suffered. The Papua New Guinea Defense Force, police force, correctional services institutions suffered. Bougainvilleans suffered. Papua New Guinea as a country suffered greatly. There were no winners at the end, Mr. Speaker. There were only survivors. I am one of the living testimonies of a survivor, so as many of my colleagues or comrades, including the Bougainvilleans. I still carry pellets from the gunshot wound in my body today, Mr. Speaker. And so, as many of my colleagues and other brothers and our brothers and sisters of Bougainville. In 2001, the Bougainville Peace Agreement ended the crisis and set a framework for peace by peaceful means under the Constitution of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, today, history presents a remarkable situation. The same political party once again finds itself at the center of determining the future of Bougainville. Under our Prime Minister, Honorable James Marape, the government now faces the responsibility of deciding whether the territorial boundaries of Papua New Guinea should remain intact or be permanently altered. I want to take this special moment in history to thank our Prime Minister, Honorable James Marape, for his bold leadership to finally bring in this matter to Parliament with a resolve to permanently put this matter to an end. My beloved Prime Minister, brother and Prime Minister, I salute you for that decision. I salute you for being decisive in your resolve to finally and permanently put this matter to rest. You are and you will be forever remembered as our champion, including all of our colleague members of Parliament on both sides of the House sitting today. This includes the regional members of all the 22 provinces, the open members of Parliament, and of course those of us who have the privilege of serving as ministers under the leadership of our Prime Minister, Chief James Marape. Credit also must be given to the 6 successive governments and the parliaments before us. This decision is larger than politics, Mr. Speaker. It is larger than personalities. It is larger than any one government. It is a decision that will define our nation forever, Mr. Speaker. My personal reflections, Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak personally on my personal reflections as a former military officer and Bougainville Civil War veteran. As a former officer of the Papua New Guinea Defense Force, I witnessed the realities of Bougainville crisis. I saw young soldiers with our counterparts from the police force and the correctional services deployed into Bougainville, into dangerous and most difficult conditions. I saw the emotional trauma carried by our servicemen. Mr. Speaker, the first soldier who lost his life on Bougainville was Second Lieutenant Yandu from Wasaragawi in Isipik province. That was the sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, I saw resistant fighters who fought alongside Papua New Guinea Defense Force soldiers to protect the constitutional sovereignty and territory of our country. Mr. Speaker, I saw young soldiers die in Bougainville. War, Mr. Speaker, war is not a theory. War is not politics. War is human suffering. Many who spoke before me, who spoke today, and who will speak later in this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, were not there. Many did not carry weapons. Many did not bury friends. Many did not witness the pain endured by both Bougainvilleans and members of the security forces. I did, Mr. Speaker. I also reflect on the Sandline affair, or the Sandline crisis, as we all know. The Sandline crisis represented one of the darkest constitutional moments in our nation's history. The decision to engage foreign mercenaries to interfere in Bougainville created a dangerous constitutional and political crisis. Had the mercenaries got on Bougainville, the situation would have been more bloodier than it was already. I believe some of the Bougainvillean leaders, including President Toroama, Ismail Toroama, and Ezekiel Massad, and others, would probably not be alive here today. That's a fact. These mercenaries were ruthless and merciless and follow no rules of war. Had the mercenaries got on Bougainville, situation would have been worse. At that time, many of us believed strongly that Papua New Guinea's sovereignty and democratic institutions were being undermined. The nation stood at the edge of instability. My colleagues, Major Walter Enuma, Captain Bola Renagi, Colonel Max Aliale, Major Charlie Andrews, late Captain Boris Ageda, late Captain Philly Mack, late Lieutenant Colonel Michael David, Captain James Pima, Captain Paul Boga, Major General Jerry Singrock, Lieutenant Linus Osaba, just to name a few. Mr. Speaker, we all participated to save the lives on Bougainville because we love the Bougainvilleans. I salute those of my colleagues for the bold stand we took to remove the mercenaries from our country. I believed our nation prevented further bloodshed and devastation on Bougainville, but we were banished to Bomana maximum security prison, only to be later released on parole and after serving 2.5 years in jail, and later given unconditional pardon by the Queen of England through advice from the head of state of Papua New Guinea on the 15th of September 2005. Mr. Speaker, we did it for national unity. We did it for peace and for harmony and for the love of Bougainville and Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this special moment also to thank the National Alliance-led government under the Sumare Temu government for my freedom and the freedom of my two colleagues. I want to also thank the Honorable Dr. Sepuka Temu, the Honorable William Duma, who was then the chairman of the Power of Mercy Committee, Mr. Patrick Purites, late Dr. Lawrence Kalino, and Moses Maladina for the freedom that they have given me and two of my colleagues. I salute you for that decision. Mr. Speaker, in March 17, 1997, was a moment in history that the country stood together in unity amidst diversity, or our complex diversity, to save our brothers and sisters on Bougainville. The public servants, the three security forces united, the university students, the NGOs led by the human rights lawyer and activist, Mr. Paul Spakov, now the governor of NCD, the Honorable Paul Spakov, Petty Lafanama, Father Lack. These are all men that stood with the soldiers, united in one nation, one country, one people, to reject the mercenaries from Bougainville, from going to Bougainville, because we believe it was morally and ethically the right thing to do. Mr. Speaker, these mercenaries are not ordinary soldiers. They are ruthless and merciless killers. The government's bad decision took us 72 hours to arrest all the mercenaries and deport them from our country because of our love for our people on the island of Bougainville, to save 360,000 people on Bougainville. Mr. Speaker, March 17, 1997 will go down in history as the day when the entire nation stood together in unity to say no against the government's decision to hire mercenaries to go to Bougainville. History may not have clearly recognized and articulated the genuineness of our role in Sandline crisis, but history will certainly acknowledge Sandline crisis as the catalyst for the start of the Bougainville peace process. The lesson from Sandline must never be forgotten. Bougainville issues cannot be resolved through force, foreign manipulation, emotional blackmail, or political intimidation. They must be resolved through the constitutional, lawful process and the preservation of our national sovereignty. Mr. Speaker, I will now speak on the referendum result, whether it reflects the true wishes of all Bougainvilleans. Mr. Speaker, we are constantly reminded that 97.7% voted in favor of independence during the referendum. But this Parliament must carefully examine whether that result truly represents a fully informed, free and fair, balanced reflection of the wishes of our people. Mr. Speaker, referendum occurred after decades of conflict, political messaging and emotional trauma. Many Bougainvilleans understandably carry historical grievances. However, we must ask ourselves questions. Were all viewpoints equally represented? Were those supporting continued autonomy within PNG given equal voice? Did fear, historical resentment, and political pressure influence the outcome? Did the referendum fully account for the long-term economic realities facing Bougainville? Mr. Speaker, this Parliament must also consider many Bougainvilleans who continue to identify themselves proudly as Papua New Guineans. There are many who value continued partnership with Papua New Guinea. Their voices must not be ignored, especially during the Bougainville crisis and after the crisis. The referendum result was politically significant, but under the Constitution, it was never intended to be automatically binding. This Parliament has a solemn constitutional responsibility to independently assess what is in the best interest, both for Bougainville and for Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, one of the most serious concerns relates to whether the conditions required under the Bougainville Peace Agreement were fully satisfied before the referendum took place. Peace Agreement clearly contemplated two critical pillars, and I say two critical pillars. One is the weapons disposal, and two, good governance. These are not mere considerations, Mr. Speaker. These are conditions that must be met before the referendum is carried out. The constitutional provisions are contained in Part 14 of the Bougainville referendum, of which is enshrined in our Constitution. Section 338 and Section 342. The question is, were they fully complied? I say no, they were never fully complied. Bougainville leaders and Bougainvilleans failed themselves in complying with those provisions of the Constitution.
Honorable Minister, I interrupt you. The honorable members, 20 minutes given to the Minister has lapsed. By hearing the presentation that he made in his speech, gives more background to the honorable members of this Parliament in the later debates to come. So using my discretion, I gave him another extra 10 minutes to sum up your speech, honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 338, referendum to be held. Subject to this section, a referendum on the future Bougainville status, future political status of Bougainville shall be held in accordance with this division. The referendum shall be held no earlier than 10 years or no later than 15 years. That has been done. Referendum shall be held, that condition is so important. Referendum shall be held only where the conditions relating to weapons disposal, very important, only relating to weapons disposal and levels of good governance of Bougainville are satisfied. Were they satisfied? I said no. Section 342 of the referendum results and implementation. Mr. Speaker, I said this in my commentary, that Section 338, subsection 3, is one of the most debated provisions in the current independence discussion, because it expressly states that referendums shall be held only where the conditions relating to weapons disposal and levels of good governance of Bougainville are satisfied. Those who oppose immediate independence often rely on the subsection to argue that weapons disposal was not fully completed and or good governance benchmarks were not fully achieved. The autonomous Bougainville government generally argues that the referendum was lawfully authorized. Both governments agreed it could proceed. International observers participated, and therefore the constitutional requirements were treated as sufficiently met before the voting occurred. Section 342 is so politically sensitive because it does not expressly say Parliament must approve the referendum result. It does not say Parliament may reject the referendum result. It does not expressly say the referendum result automatically takes effect. But rather, it only requires consultation between national government and the Bougainville government and the presentation of the result to Parliament. The issue of non-binding nature of the result of the referendum originates from this section and derives from the interpretation that presentation of the results to Parliament is the final constitutional step before the results can be of any effect. Until it reaches Parliament, it remains of no effect, hence non-binding. Mr. Speaker, can anyone honestly stand in this Parliament and say that all weapons were fully disposed of in Bougainville? No one can. Even today, concerns remain regarding the presence of firearms and armed elements in parts of Bougainville, including the so-called Megamui Defense Force in Panguna, Kongara, Kieta, and Arava areas. I know this because I have been there. And the Noa Musingu and his armed royal guards and youths in Siwa and Naguvis areas in Bougainville are still alive and exist today. This is a serious matter, Mr. Speaker. The peace agreement did not envision a referendum occurring under conditions where weapons concerns remained unresolved. I believe the so-called weapons disposal exercise was done in haste to meet the approaching closing window of opportunity for the referendum to be held, and was conveniently glossed over with the presence of so-called international observers or supervision. There was never a true weapons disposal on Bougainville. Bougainville leaders and everyone know it. They know the weapons are still in Bougainville. And so we failed that condition prescribed under the peace agreement and the Constitution. Don't come to this Parliament and cry when you have failed. And so, Mr. Speaker, secondly, questions remain regarding governance standards. Internationally acceptable standards of governance require strong institutions, effective rule of law, accountability, transparency, financial integrity, stable security arrangements, and effective public administration. This Parliament must honestly assess whether the standards have been fully achieved. For example, I want to see all the Auditor General's report on financial performance of ABG since 2005 to understand financial integrity of the autonomous region of Bougainville. I want to know why Noa Musingu, a fugitive wanted by the law in this country, has not been arrested by the Bougainville Police Service. Noa Musingu continues to operate His Royal Highness and Kingdom of Papala in Bougainville? Where is the demonstration of effective rule of law on Bougainville and by the Bougainville leaders? Where is the performance report of ABG public service demonstrating effective administration, service delivery, and economic development since 2005, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the issue before us is not whether Bougainvilleans deserve respect. They do. We have given them. We have fought for them. We died for them. We got rid of mercenaries because we love them. The issue is, have they met those requirements? The issue is whether the constitutional conditions agreed under the peace agreement were fully satisfied before any move toward referendum and independence was made. I submit that they were not fully complied with. Recent pronouncement and military-style symbolism by the leadership of Bougainville. I will say it. No one will say it. I will tell them. Because I have operated in Bougainville. The recent developments, recent public announcements and appearances by the President, Ismail Toroama, including references to himself in terms of associated with Commander-in-Chief authority and appears in military-style attire, raise very serious security concerns. What Bougainville Defense Force is this President of Bougainville talking about? Papua New Guinea has only one lawful defense force under the Constitution and one commander of the defense force that reports to the National Executive Council. Mr. Speaker, any political symbolism, language or conduct that suggests the existence of a separate military authority within Bougainville risks undermining both the peace agreement and the constitutional order of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, Bougainville Peace Agreement was founded upon demilitarization, was founded upon reconciliation and peaceful constitutional engagement. Any movement towards militarization, military symbolism, or separatist military posturing is dangerous and irresponsible. It is therefore unconstitutional for ABG to have its own defense force. Yet it is clear to me that ABG has demonstrated no respect whatsoever for the sovereignty of the national constitution and the peace agreement. The ABG and its leadership have gone ahead with undertakings on Bougainville as if they are already an independent state. This is utterly unacceptable and must not be taken lightly by this Parliament. This is an act of sedition. The President must be summoned and held accountable for his actions. No one will tell him. I am telling him. This Parliament must send a clear message that the sovereignty of Papua New Guinea cannot be challenged through symbolism, intimidation, or parallel claims of military authority. A call for national unity, Mr. Speaker. Papua New Guinea is already a nation of immense diversity. Our strength has always been unity within diversity. Only recently, on the 18th of May this year, the President of Autonomous Region of Bougainville is seen officiating in a fully dressed military uniform on the Remembrance Day in Arawa and claiming himself as the chief of the Bougainville Defense Force. Mr. Speaker, since when did Bougainville adopted its own constitution and became independent? This clearly demonstrates that Bougainville leadership has no regard and respect for the Bougainville Peace Agreement. No wonder why the elements of Bougainville Revolutionary Army, the so-called Megamui Defense Force, have not fully complied with Section 338 and Section 342 of the Constitution for total surrender and disposal of the weapons. Section 338 and Section 342 of the Constitution have not been fully complied and implemented, rendering this referendum process result unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. I repeat it again. Since Section 338 and Section 342 of the Constitution have not been fully complied with and implemented, this renders this entire referendum process and result unconstitutional. This is not a time for emotional decision-making. This is not the time for political games, Mr. Speaker. This is the time for the call of leadership in this parliament. Mr. Speaker, Bougainville is part of Papua New Guinea. Bougainvilleans are our brothers and sisters. Their grievances must continue to be addressed through autonomy, through development, reconciliation, and partnership. But independence is not the answer. The answer is deeper national unity. The answer is constitutional stability. The answer is meaningful autonomy within one sovereign Papua New Guinea. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, after careful reflection on the Constitution, the territorial integrity of Papua New Guinea, the incomplete conditions surrounding the referendum, the unresolved weapons disposal concerns, the governance challenges, recent developments that threaten the spirit of peace agreement and the Constitution of Papua New Guinea, I state categorically today, for and on behalf of myself and the peace-loving citizens of Vanimo-Green River electorate and Greater Papua New Guinea Party, that this Parliament must reject outright the Bougainville referendum result due to the fact that they have not met the conditions of the Bougainville Peace Agreement and the Constitution under Section 338, subsection 3. Let us preserve peace. Let us preserve unity. Let us preserve absolute sovereignty handed down to us by our founding fathers at the independence in 1975, on the 16th of September, 1975. History will judge the decisions we make today, Mr. Speaker, on this floor of Parliament. May we act not in fear. May we act not in anger. May we act with wisdom and courage and unwavering commitment to one united Papua New Guinea. May our Creator God, the Almighty, bless our motherland, Papua New Guinea, as established and defined under Section 2 of our Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.